there, welcome to Daily Wisdom Dive Day 7, where today we're taking a dive into Proverbs chapter 7. Now, chapter 7 is, I would say, a much shorter chapter versus the other chapters that we've discussed. But again, here, Proverbs chapter 7 is again talking about the adulterous woman or the immoral woman. I think there are just some key principles or key takeaway points that we can apply, because I think really the immoral woman is the equivalent of sin in general here. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. I think a key point to bring to your attention is Solomon is telling his son here to say to wisdom, "You're my sister," or call understanding your relative. And I think the reason for telling that to his son is that if you consider a sister or a relative, these are people that you're connected to for life. And usually you have a level of pure love for these people. Someone who's your sister, someone who's a family relative, you're technically connected to that person for life, for a very long time, okay? And you usually have a level of pure love for that person. And so when Solomon tells his son to say to wisdom, "You're my sister," call understanding a relative, I think the underlying message here is we should keep wisdom so close that it should always be connected to us, and we should always have a level of pure love for wisdom. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into Proverbs chapter 7. It's really from the perspective of Solomon giving a story about an unwise young man falling into the traps of the immoral woman. An important point I want to make here is that the woman discussed in Proverbs chapter 7 is not a prostitute, okay? She's just an immoral woman, an adulteress. And you can find support for that in Proverbs chapter 7 verse 10, where it specifically mentions she had an attire of a harlot. That indicates that she wasn't a prostitute. She was dressed like one, but she wasn't one. This is a woman who is married. She sees sex as a transaction because clearly she doesn't appreciate the fact that sex is supposed to be within her marriage. So she sees sex as a transaction, but she's not a prostitute here. She's just dressed like one. Now, what are the key takeaway points? I think one of the key questions that I asked myself here when I was reading chapter 7 is, how real is your love? And for me, what drove this question home is Proverbs chapter 7 verse 18. Because here the immoral woman is telling this young man, "Come, let us go and delight and satisfy ourselves in our love till morning." And I'm like, what kind of love can you possibly get from a stranger? This is someone you don't know. Here the young wise man didn't know her. He just went into her, and she's flattering him, and she's enticing him, and she's seducing him, and she's saying, "Let's go and delight ourselves and satisfy ourselves in our loves until morning." And I think that's why Solomon made particular attention to the fact that this is an unwise young man, because had he been experienced, this is probably a question he would have raised, right? And he would have come to understand that what this lady is promising him is nothing more than just false and empty promises. There's nothing more to it. But although she offered him love, that love was not a lasting love. It was a love that was going to last in the moment and until the morning. And so that's why I said at the beginning, we can equate this immoral woman to sin. It looks enticing, right? This woman is loud and she's rebellious and she's not ashamed. She's dressed like a harlot, even though she's not one. Clearly, she has no type of dignity or reverence for her marriage. And it's just like sin. Sin entices us. It comes in a way that looks pleasant, right? It appeals to some of our desires, because like here, she told this guy, "Look, I was looking for you specifically and I found you." Right? Which means she was appealing to his ego. She was making him feel wanted. And so at the end, he ended up giving into seduction as an unwise young man. I think the important thing to remember here is that's why Solomon urges us to keep wisdom as a sister and understanding as a relative, because when we have wisdom close, it's going to help us in certain situations like that. Now, another point to drive home is that there's always some level of escape to temptation. And you can find support for that in verse 21, where specifically at the end of that chapter, it says her lips forced him. And I think the word force here is important because you can only force someone or something if there has been some level of resistance or hesitation in the first place. So the fact that it makes mention that her lips forced him means he hesitated to some degree to really give in to this lady's seduction. But in the end, he gave in anyways. He went in and he got seduced by her. And flowing straight into verse 22, where Solomon is like, just like an ox is going to be slaughtered and don't know he's going to be slaughtered, or the bird is rushing to the snare or the trap, not realizing it's going to cost him his life, so too did this unwise young man go into the house of the woman. The ox doesn't realize it's going to be slaughtered until it gets to the house and is actually slaughtered, or I don't know what they do when they slaughter an ox. Like, I don't know if it's killed immediately. Or the bird that's rushing to the trap, not realizing it's a trap and it's going to cost it its life. Both of which are too late at the point of realization to escape, right? And that's the same thing this guy did. He's not realizing that what he's going into is pretty much unto his own death, like the chapter ended. Like, her house leads to the grave and going down to the chambers of death. So that's what happened here. Sin is enticing, it's seductive, it's pleasant in the moment. However, the end result of it is destruction and ultimately death. So if we keep wisdom close, if we always pay close attention to wisdom, and we have that love for always having wisdom and understanding, it will protect us and keep us safe from situations like this, from being tempted in general. So those are the key takeaway points for Proverbs chapter 7. Go ahead and drop your comments down below. Let me know what your key takeaway points were. And join me back here tomorrow for our daily wisdom dive into Proverbs chapter 8.